So I present you today with God versus Candace Owens, Bassam Youssef, Hassan Piker, Tucker Carlson, Chink Unger, and of course, Nick Fuentes. I present to you today all of these guys from different platforms, different politics, same target. Because right now, Jew hatred has been coming from every single side, ladies and gentlemen. And they're not even whispering anymore. It's not even coded. It is out there and it is in the open. And here's the truth. They don't want you to connect the dots, that this isn't about policy. This isn't about borders. It's not about criticism. It is a spiritual thing. It is spiritual decay. And every time anything in history turns dark, it follows the same pattern. Jews become the problem. Israel becomes the target. And moral clarity just gets replaced. It gets replaced with rage. But they dress up the rage as if it is righteousness. So I'm not reacting today. I'm going to be exposing not necessarily the why, but the what. Or maybe the what, but not the why. I don't know what I'm going to break down, but I'm going to break it down today. I'm breaking down the pattern, the propaganda, the spiritual decay behind it, and why this moment matters more than people realize. Hit the intro. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Nissim Black Show. You really think, if you were to put yourself in their shoes, that you'd be worried about who the politician, what side they're on? It just does not work that way. I'm Nissim Black, Israeli-American Black Hasidic Jewish rapper turned podcaster. This is the Nissim Black Show, where prophecy meets politics, faith collides with culture, and we search for truth in a world on fire. Thank you so much for joining us on the Nissim Black Show. Always my honor and my pleasure to be with every single one of you. As I've said in the introduction here, we have so many different things to cover in today's episode. Of course, we will start with one of our favorite haters. We're at least talking about people who hate us, people that hate common sense. Candace Owens today, she has an interview with Bassam Youssef, and she talked about many different things in this interview. One of the things that she did talk about was, of course, Erika Kirk, and the other thing, of course, was Israel. And we're going to get into that conversation. I want to start with a few different clips of things that she was saying about Erika. Now, at this point, we can all see that this person is heartless. Any hope that we may have had that Candace was going to come back to some type of common sense or some type of, human emotions and different things like that, they're gone at this point. I'm not so sure that she, at this point, has any type of humanity left in her at this point. And I don't mean to sound so crazy, but at the end of the day, all I can judge it off is what I see. She goes after Erika Kirk, and she's going back and forth. Shout out to Milk Bar TV, Nathan Livingstone, of course. Always show him some love here on this channel because he puts together a clip, essentially, of where Candace is calling Erika Kirk out for being too emotional. Then we're seeing other clips of her saying she's not emotional enough. And so what is it? And what you see always with this individual is contradiction after contradiction. And it's going to keep happening. You're seeing lies. You're seeing sleight of hand. You're going to continue to see this, working of manipulation, because that's what this person is. Then after that, I'm going to discuss with all of you. I'm going to at least give over by way of monologue. Can't discuss because you're not here with me. Eventually, I want to move to live streams, but we're not there yet. But anyway, I want to tell all of you why this is a problem. Not what's a problem about it. Right? Because I think we all have enough common sense. We all have a heart enough to understand what the problem is, but we don't know why. What's behind this? What's behind Bassam Youssef? And many of you who don't know him, he is one of these, fake, comedians. I mean, fake activists. He's a real comedian. He's really corny. I happen to not think that he's funny at all. And it's not just because he's not on my side. I just don't think he's that funny. I really don't. But he uses his comedy license in order for him to say what he wants to say. He's one of those guys that whenever he's busted, just very similar to Dave Smith, who was also not funny, and then he'll hide behind, I'm just a comedian, right? So this is the type of guy you have on. And I want you to see this, and we'll talk about this again, but misery loves company, right? Between her and then Tucker, having Chink on, whatever, we're going to get into a few different things. So watch clip 1 and let's dissect.
You're making hundreds and thousands of dollars every single episode going after the people that I love because somehow they're in on this. No.
And I hate to say this, but I'm going to be very clear here. This is why there are many people who do not believe that women are equipped to lead companies, because what you are watching here is an unbelievably emotional response that is absent of any logic, okay?
We are moving forward, Turning Point USA 2.0 with Charlie in our hearts, and that's what he would want.
Again, we are not even 2 weeks after watching your husband be assassinated. We're talking about numbers and metrics that have been hit. We know everybody grieves differently. In my imagination, I just thought she would be more upset. No, she didn't even respond to one of the conspiracies. She gave us emotion. She gave us emotion. She said, I'm a mother, I am a wife, and we never asked about whether she was a mother or wife. We want to know if she is a CEO and a chairman. And a CEO and a chairman has to compartmentalize. Imagine you're the employee and you're like, okay, well, this is his wife saying this. So am I weird? Would I be like, I would be pretty weird if I needed to take time off and his wife is saying she's full steam ahead.
Honestly, Turning Point USA and Turning Point Action, full steam ahead, you guys. Charlie would want us to get back to work, and that's what we're doing.
Well, now you're gonna have to prove that you have the ability to be a CEO and a chairman and not just a wife who we expect emotion.
Is she not proving that? Ladies and gentlemen, is she not proving that by this call? And I'm going to, after this, play this audio. I wanted to get to another clip of her in Boston, but I'm going to play this audio that she's critiquing, right, in video 2, the one on the probably if you're watching this, the one on the left side. I want you to hear this audio because that's what Erika's doing. She's going full steam ahead, right? And there's nothing wrong. I'm just telling you, I just want you to hear what she is critiquing first, because this is going to open up a whole world of just you understanding what's behind all of this. And you're seeing it here. On one side, she's too emotional. Then she's not emotional enough. How could you be this way? Your husband just passed away. And then at the same time, oh, your husband passed away. You're over emotional. You're guilting us. I mean, you guys have seen this over and over again, but I'm just context. We'll get to the why.
From, and you're rightful in that capacity. You are rightful to have emotion. You are rightful to be the aggrieved widow, but you don't get to just be widowed into the position of chairman and CEO. People who did not know Charlie could not stop crying and were sending me emails, who've never met Charlie, who didn't even know what Turning Point USA was because they watched his assassination, could not stop crying and pull themselves together. That is not the emotion that we're getting there. Like I said, the entire call is upbeat. Go find your commentator who's going to tell you everybody grieves differently. Nope, that is less than 2 weeks after Charlie was publicly assassinated. That doesn't feel right to me. That, well, now the widow has spoken. We're not dealing with the widow. We want the CEO and the chairman of Turning Point USA to answer. Okay? If you can't compartmentalize, then I don't see how you're going.
Compartmentalize, by the way, is not a word. I'm just throwing this out there. Compartmentalize is not a word. That's a Candace made-up invention. Compartmentalize is actually a word, and I think that's what she's trying to say. But whatever, I'm going to let her keep embarrassing herself.
Going to be able to lead this organization in the future. The now fired employees are telling me, no, it was quite the opposite. She was in the office every day with Stacey Sheridan, running around with Stacey Sheridan, taking phone calls with Stacey Sheridan. That's like the head of the fundraising for Turning Point USA. So what I had imagined in my head was happening simply was not so. I'm sorry, but that whole thing right there is frustrating. Something is not right.
And what I could tell you from this is there's several things. A lot of people are saying Candace is jealous because of this, or she loved Charlie, or this or that, or whatever the case is. And it's obvious because, Charlie stopped following Candace on social media. It was just too much for him, obviously. They saw the world differently. And so the relationship really between Candace and Erika was never really there. Erika kind of came in, probably as Candace was on her way out. I forget what the exact timeline is, but it wasn't long enough for Candace and Erika to really build that bond. So a lot of people have been speculating about jealousy, but there is above that. I think that there's something she's even more jealous about. And what that was is that Charlie's been able to run a successful organization. right? And it was so successful. And Candace, when she was running an organization, was so not successful that Charlie's organization had to take over hers. And I'm talking about Blexit. And so Candace was not competent. She was not able to run an organization. She does very well when she is the only thing and she's the center of attention. She does very well with gaslighting and creating conspiracy and whatever the case is. The organization of Candace of it in itself, very successful. But when it comes to an organization that includes other people, relationships, team building, and all these other things, she is a failed chairman. That's what she is. She is a failed chairman. So her going after Erika, I think, is even deeper than Charlie. It's the fact that she hit the ground running and she is turning and she's keeping TPUSA going, right? So I'm going to play you this audio, this mysterious audio that she has. Some of you may have already seen, even the video was a Zoom call between Erika and the team, right? And she is talking and encouraging her team and her troops. And she stepped up after her husband passed away. What would you want from anybody else? Let me play this audio so you can hear what Candace was critiquing her about, that she was not emotional enough, although before she was too emotional. I mean, you just can't make this stuff up, ladies and gentlemen.
Hi, everybody. I still love all these emoji Zoom things. Wow. I don't even know where to begin. The fact that we were able to pull off an event of a century, like, it's just insane. We had over 275,000 people that attended, and the stadium, overflow, Westgate, insane, you guys. And then you have, was it 100 million? You guys that heard the gospel and all about Charlie and all about everything that you guys do and the hard work of Turning Point USA is insane.
She's genuinely excited, not about the fact that her husband passed away. You can hear this, right? But she's excited that because of that, more and more people got to hear about, the message of her religion, of her faith, of their faith, right? Which is a major thing. I mean, the Great Commission, Christians, of course, care about the spreading of that. So she's just, you can't get more genuine. That's what I'm saying, that of her taking this tragic situation and turning it in for herself to a godly moment and experiencing and expressing to herself, from herself to her team, of what a great experience, and thanking and applauding people. This is what Candace is saying, that she is just, oh my goodness, she can't believe that she could possibly be this way after her husband passed away.
Thousands that were registered to vote. I think we're at like over 200,000 for merch sales. Don't quote me on that, because I think it just keeps like bumping up like crazy. But I just wanted to say a huge, huge, huge thank you to the events team, the development team, the graphic design team, the production team. It's just phenomenal. Their incredible work leading into the memorial. And honestly, a lot of the staff that worked on the memorial, they had 20-hour days for a week during the time of us grieving the loss of my husband. And honestly, I know several staff that didn't even sleep. Again, you guys are breathing angels, and I'm so grateful for all of you and in the trenches with you
okay,
guys.
so I think you guys have heard enough of what was going on there, right? Enough to know that there was nothing nefarious. There was nothing that was lacking of any emotion or that was distracting from the fact that Charlie had passed away. But Candace will pick and go at her nonstop about this particular call that she has with her team. And it is just so heartless. It is just at this point. Now, we know that at one point earlier on, Candace was talking about, if Erika asks me to stop, then I'll stop. And that's already been proven. She said no, she's not going to stop. She meets with Erika after sitting down. And then she tries to do some pullback. Her audience eats her alive. because at some point that, like, you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't just go ahead and convince the world of something and then think you're just going to easily pull back, right? So she doesn't. She continues with the heartless, Candace, as we know, and it just is only snowballing and getting worse. I want to show you already. I'm going to get into some of the interview that she had with this horrible comedian Bassem Youssef, and just see how she already starting with him on the whole Erika Kirk thing. It just at some point it's so bad that it can't get any worse.
What do you think about Erika Kirk?
Would I get sued?
Throw it in the pile. Of course you will.
I don't want to say anything that's controversial. She did it, but I don't want. She was on it.
I don't want to get into.
I don't want to get into. She's part of it.
I can't wait till that gets clipped.
She's a plant. But
as I say, ladies and gentlemen, misery loves company. Misery loves company. I want you to see this X post actually too, because right now I think many people are calling for a what you would call an exorcism of Candace Owens. So look at this tweet. So it happens to be very funny because shout out to, I think it was Britta who put this. It says she needs an exorcism. All right. So, and Candace replies to this, basically poking at Erika Kirk, saying, "I'm actually grieving here, and you have no right to dictate how others properly grieve." Heartless. Heartless. Just heartless. And I would like to share with you more from the interview, because obviously we pivot from Erika Kirk and then we move on to what we really want to talk about is Israel, anti-Israel rhetoric, something that both of these two are known for, unfortunately. And so, of course, Candace is going to start asking him questions, wants to see what his feelings are. And of course, this is the biggest thing. It's the Holocaust conspiracy. And there's always, what you'll find, there's never any receipts for any of these conspiracy theories. They are just all completely made up, never any receipts, and the validation becomes that so-and-so told me this happened, so therefore it must be true. And an audience that will not go and investigate these things is going to listen to it, eat it up, and not think twice about any of the people who are saying these things and not to actually look into them. So, roll clip 4.
What I was saying about the Bolsheviks. I mean, one episode we were speaking about even the things that they told us about World War II and the things, and they panicked, and it was hilarious because in a couple of months later, Auschwitz Museum comes out and says the stuff that was said about Dr. Joseph Mengele, a lot of it was made up. He never did these things. He was actually before all of this, a respected doctor. Auschwitz Museum put this on their website, and
they changed the number from 4 million to 1 million overnight.
I mean, there's been a lot of changes, but you're not allowed to know history or how the numbers changed. And I was grateful to sit down with Norm Finkelstein, and I asked him about that question, because he's like, my parents, one of his parents was in Auschwitz, and the other parent was, I'm blanking on which of the other camps they were in. And he said, he acknowledges it. He's like, yeah, of course. He said, my parents told me some people were taking the tattoos off and some people were putting them on. I believe we're laundering their names. I spoke to him about this, making themselves victims, and they actually were the perpetrators of a lot of the crimes that were happening against Christians, mass murder of Christians, which we're not allowed to talk about. The number one victims of World War II were not Jews, it was Christians.
Ladies and gentlemen, where's it at? Where's all the evidence for all of this? You won't find it. These people are going to they're going to try to erase history and make up their own, because that's the only way for them to get over with any of these narratives to the audience, is that if they erase history, quote one credible source about something else that has something to do over there, they spin off of that before even going back to letting you know that they're just talking about themselves, they're just making it up, or they heard it from a friend or from a source. They pivot back into that, and it makes it sound as if it's all coming from that credible source, and it's not. These are just them talking back and forth. Just watch what happens. Watch the sleight of hand between these two, right? And there were many Christians who perished during World War II. That was because a lot of people identified culturally as Christian. There was no intentional murdering of Christians going on during World War II. Hitler did not say, let me gather all the Christians together and let me kill them, right? There were many Christians who passed away during World War II. Granted, it was Europeans were fighting. The majority of Europe was Christians. So they did die, unfortunately. But the fact of the matter is that there was not a hit on Christianity during World War II. This is a person rewriting history, trying to use the sleight of hand in order to give over a different narrative, unfortunately. And if she cared that much, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to ask you, all right, for any of people who have consumed her, even over the last year, she's barely talking about all the Christians that are being slaughtered today. Why only when it becomes a contention of Jews and World War II or the Holocaust, all that, then she wants to bring up Christian suffering. But I barely heard her say anything about what was going on in Nigeria, right? Barely hearing her say all these different pockets of where jihadism is killing Christians all over the place. This never makes it into her content. Maybe here and there, whatever the case is, but never becomes the bulk of her content. Only in a contrast of where there may be something like, the Israelis are funding weapons to this one country, and that country is killing Jews. Oh, look at the Israelis. You understand what I'm saying? All of this is motives, but it's not about the what, ladies and gentlemen. It's about the why, and we're going to get to the why.
And when you say that, they get so angry because they have worked so hard for decades to manipulate people in the classroom to believe that the only victims that have ever existed in history were Jews, and that's just on its face false, and it is a lie, and we have to do a better job of getting out the truth.
And by the way, I wouldn't even mind if that was the story.
Yeah.
But the fact that they use that in order to
How many
inflict
movies?
Holocaust on other people.
It's crazy.
Palestinians who had nothing to do with, okay, Holocaust, 12 million Jews were killed. Whatever. But like we didn't do that. The Palestinians weren't part of it.
But one doesn't have what to do with the other. Has nothing to do. Well, you have terrorists, people that are here trying to destroy and trying to uproot and trying to kill Jews. That's where you become the same. It has nothing to do. You understand what I'm saying? It has nothing to do with Palestinians today having what to do with Hitler. Has nothing to do. Although there was some connection. The Grand Mufti and Hitler were actually connected, and they did actually want to kill Jews that were also here in Israel. This is stuff you can look up, or verifiable, right? So there was that connection. But the bigger connection, what's been going on here in Israel between the Palestinians and the Israelis, has nothing to do with Jews saying, oh, well, they participated in the Holocaust. But this is what I'm saying, sleight of hand over and over again from these guys. So now he's going to go on to make a ridiculous claim. You're probably about to hear one of the worst claims that you've ever heard before. And the truth is, you ask him, where's the source for this? Where did you get this from? Right? It's all made up conspiracies, one after the other, one after the other. But here, this one, I'm telling you, because it gets worse.
A country that has a very lucrative history of false flags operation. When they created the state of Israel, they didn't know how to bring all of these Jewish people from the Arab countries. It was easy to bring them from Europe, but they didn't. But they, like Jewish people in Iraq and in Egypt and Morocco, lived there for hundreds of years. So they needed to push them. So 1951, Israel sends a Mossad agent, and then he leads 4 to 5 different bomb attacks on Jewish synagogues and Jewish communities. They killed their own.
It does not get any more ridiculous than this. It just doesn't. It just does not get any more ridiculous than this. This is always the case. Nothing actually happened really from the aggressive, surrounding Arab countries and neighbors. It was Jews. They went in, right? Now, there's several issues with the story that Israel in 1948 and around then sent Mossad operatives into the surrounding Arab countries to bomb synagogues in order to create the illusion, right, that there was aggression coming from the Arab neighbors. And so therefore that caused them to all move in mass migration to the state of Israel, which was predominantly, I guess the powers that be at that time were Ashkenazi Jews from Europe, who culturally had a big problem with even trying to integrate with the Jews from the Mizrahi, or what we would say the Sephardic, Arab nation Jews who were coming out of there. Like, the whole story is crazy. You don't understand. If you do not know anything about cultural differences amongst Jews and Jewish background, like the whole thing just sounds nuts. It sounds crazy, right? But I will let this continue playing because again, it's not about the what. It's about the why.
Own people.
October 7th.
And yes, and that happened in Iraq. And then because of that, 150,000 Jews went in just like a year and a half to Israel. After Iraq, he went to Egypt. And he led the Lavon Affair in 1954. And you know what's funny about the Lavon Affair? Israel denied any connection to those people, of course, for 51 years. And then in 2005, they finally acknowledged it by giving the participants in the Lavon Affair operation participation certificates, like an Amazon card or something. And then 1994, the bombing of the Israeli embassy in London, it was done by Mossad. And then they kind of nailed 2 Palestinians for it. 1 month after 9/11, which is the biggest false flag operation, in October 2001, there was an attack of the Mexican parliament by 2 Mossad individuals, and they were also like being they pretended to be Palestinians, but they were discovered before the bombing, the USS Liberty. Well, there has been investigation, and it was obviously wrong, and it was obvious, and it was proved beyond any doubt that it was a mistake, which wasn't. There was a lot of investigation where they weren't. Actually, the crew of the USS Liberty were threatened. They had a gag order. They couldn't talk. And you know, the beauty about this is that for 15 years, Israel fought this tooth and nail, and they finally paid compensation. You know how much did they pay? $6 million for damages in the USS Liberties, and $6 million for the victims of the USS Liberty. This is the value of USS soldiers. How can you believe a country that lies 24/7 like this? How can we take anything that they say?
So the problem is with this is many different things. To go through all the different claims and to refute every single thing. But one of the things that you will see by this is just predictability. It's always going to be predictable, right? There's never any suffering or anything bad happening to Jews that Jews are not the ones behind, because after all, they're behind everything. They've done everything wrong. And everything that happens in the world is them, right? According to clowns like this. So therefore, yes, if anything bad happens to Jews, then therefore they were the ones who did it, and it all gets blamed. It all goes back to the Mossad. I want you guys to understand these things. Everything that they're saying, right? There is a rational, there's a historic explanation for the USS Liberty, what happened in those Arab countries in 1948, what happened in Israel in 1948, what's going on. There are official narratives, right? And it's unfortunate that today there's so many different things that are breaking down, and all the while that the light is coming forth on so many different things, that it's almost easy at this point to keep with that energy and tell you everything that you know about something was a lie. And that's what these people are doing. They're hopping on this bandwagon. I think they are intentionally doing it, but I also think that they are kind of the, nut jobs that they pretend to be. But I want to tell you not about the why, but about the what, but about the why. That's what I want to tell you. I want to tell you what you're really watching here. When you see conversations like this, you're not, for sure, one thing, you're not seeing the truth unfold. That's not what you're seeing. You are watching that misery in itself loves company. And that's why all these guys get together. Because I want you to notice something. Every time they get together, there's no light at the end of what they're talking about. There's no joy there. There's hardly ever any solution. Notice how they're never solution driven. Her, Candace, all these guys that come up with this nonsense. We got more to get into today, but there's no healing in anything that they're talking about. It's literally just accusation upon accusation, and they're just layered, accusation upon another one. And that is the giveaway. When people come together and all that they can produce is resentment, sarcasm, blame, that tells you everything you need to know already about what's happening even inside the people themselves. And that is the deeper issue here. Once you remove God from the center of your life, then something else will always rush to take his place. A lot of times it could be ego. Sometimes it will be politics. It will be, some other grievance. But what is always going to enter there will be emptiness. And emptiness does not stay quiet, because emptiness in itself will demand an audience from people. That's what's going to happen. And so what happens, it turns into misery. And so instead of dealing with their own brokenness, that's what all these people are, that's what we're dealing with. Like I said, this is the why are they there? Instead of dealing with their own brokenness, and because they lack inner peace, their own unanswered questions, really about themselves, they then redirect. They start projecting. And that's what's happening. And they want you to be angry at something. Israel, Jews have been a scapegoat for a long time. So they want you to be angry at Israel. They want you to be obsessed with Jews. They want you to chase all of these conspiracies instead of confronting the very things in front of you that you have to deal with in yourself. This is why Charlie kept saying, this leads to nothing productive of yourself. It only leads to more brain rot. So instead of confronting your own soul and your own issue, you become consumed down rabbit holes of hours upon hours watching conspiracies about Jews, only to realize you've never even met a Jew. I'm not saying everybody, but I'm just saying there are crazy people like this. Never met a Jew. They don't even know. But at the end of the day, they're consumed by Jew hatred. And it's because of people like this who are projecting their own emptiness and their own evil. Because if you're really busy fighting all these phantom enemies that you don't have time to fix your own real life. So ask yourself, I want everybody to ask themselves this honestly. I want you to think about this. After you watch Candace or after you watch any of this content, do you feel uplifted? Do you feel closer to God? Do you feel more loving towards your fellow human being? I don't think you do. I bet you probably feel colder. And that usually is the answer. God is not moving through any of this. He's not through the mockery, not through all the hatred. God's not moving through any of this. There is a certain amount of humility that you have to be as a presenter, that you have to possess. And that's never there. It is always these unverified facts of trust me, we are the media, we know. That is what's missing in all of these guys' nonsense and all of their rhetoric. It is completely made up fantasized stories that tell you over in a very matter-of-fact type of way. And what happens is the fruit of arrogance. You see this starts to bud and gets louder and louder and grow. Because what you'll see is everything comes around these people. They have bad issues with anger. They love to be in the center of attention. And what I'm trying to tell you, the reason why I'm trying to get to the why and not the what is because if we can identify the why, then the what becomes irrelevant. Doesn't matter if it's Erika, Kirk they're talking about. Doesn't matter if it's Israel that they're talking about. That what will become so irrelevant when you start to see the why, when you start to notice human behavior and the pattern, especially as people who love God and are trying to actually grow, which I hope we are on this channel, right? Is that you'll start to see these things. None of these people are doing anything to expose real corruption. They are just exporting despair into whoever's listening to them. And the Bible itself, the Torah, has already warned us about this, that people who abandon truth don't become neutral people. If you abandon truth and you have taken into lies, you will not become a neutral person. You will become a bitter person. And bitter people don't build anything. Guess what they do? They burn things. And that's what they do. And people are being burnt. Let's move on. Hey, wait 1 second. I want to tell you about something really unique I was invited to be a part of. It's called the Dream Raffle. And the grand prize is a fully furnished $1.2 million apartment in Jerusalem. It's not a timeshare, not a discount, an actual move-in ready home in one of the most meaningful cities on earth. You're entering a raffle, so it's a chance to win. But here's what matters to me. This isn't just about the prize. The raffle is run by a nonprofit, and every single ticket supports real causes in Israel. Emergency responders, families in need, widows and orphans, soldiers, and community programs. So whether you win or not, your participation is doing real good in the world. They also have bonus prizes for early entries, including cash giveaways. If this speaks to you, the dream, the mission, or both, check it out at thedreamraffle.com/Nissim. That's thedreamraffle.com/Nissim. Okay, back to the show. In other news, ladies and gentlemen, Hassan Piker, who is a Twitch extraordinaire, has been banned from the platform. The reason why he's been banned is because they just couldn't take it anymore. The anti-Israel propaganda, the anti-Semitism, the Jew hatred that has come out of this guy, just vile, vitriol, disgusting, low-down person that he is finally got banned. And I'm never a guy that's usually rooting for people to get banned off of platforms. But at the end of the day, there's so many kids on here. There's so many, and it's the same thing with TikTok, all these other things. He was having a, somewhat of a monologue, upset that, people got involved, Congress got involved with buying TikTok because of all the anti-Israel stuff that was going on. And a lot of it was bots. A lot of them were paid off influencers from Qatari money, right? That's one thing, to push anti-Israel propaganda on that platform on TikTok. Great for the Chinese, right? Obviously, who had their hand in the game. So unfortunately, Hassan Piker says some, I guess at this point it was too much. Like, he said worse things than with this next clip I'm actually going to show you. But I think at some point they just was like, it's too much. It's too much. So hear what he had to say. And then I want to show you Aiden Ross, who also happens to be a big Twitcher. He is actually Jewish. Gets very, very excited about this. But see clip one.
Both anti-ICE and pro-Palestinian. This is another big suck my dick to all the Israel writers out there. You rabid ultra-Zionist pigs. You run around going, oh my God, Israel first, Israel first. Why are you tying this back to Palestine? Because this is precisely the same shit. Okay? You Israel first monsters, dude. Jesus Christ. How can you say that when the first immigration action that the Trump administration took was literally try to deport anti-Israel protesters, trying to deport people for writing articles in their student newspaper against Israel, hurting Israel's feelings. And then they still act like this is not the identical situation. Cue Ethan's one meme. Ethan can suck, dude. Jesus Christ. It's a conspiracy. It's a conspiracy that one of the biggest pro-Israel IDF donors went and purchased TikTok specifically because he wanted to make it pro-Israel, and that every single person that played a role, every single politician that played a role in the sale of TikTok openly said they were selling TikTok because they were scared that people were becoming too anti-Israel. Every single person that refuses to acknowledge that tries to disparage people for calling this out, that tries to deflect attention away from this issue, is a monstrous liar that is only invested in Israel and nothing else.
Okay, so obviously that was a mouthful. There was a lot of that we had to actually take out because the guy just speaks filthy, right? But people are riding, so people are riding, and that just is what it is. So I want to show you, Aiden Ross actually got excited about this also too, and he had his own few choice words to actually say about this.
No, no way. Yes! Oh my God! Oh, cuff him. Oh my God.
Go to the stream.
Oh my God. I know. I'm gonna look. Oh my God. Stop. Cuff him. There is no way. Cuff him. I'm gonna celebrate. No,
go to the streamer band. Fearbo might be getting his check.
Yes! Yes!
Is that real?
You dog abuser. You hate America. You. You.
Move to China. Bang! Hold on, we gotta fact check this.
Fact check.
Streamer bands.
Hold on, chat.
Fact check. Hold on.
Hold on. Yes! I'm smoking on Hassan.
Where you banging?
Oh, LOL. Hassan.
We did get him.
Hassan.
Man.
Yes, I'm smoking on you.
We did get
you suck. I always knew there was something weird about you, bro. Stop abusing Kaya, and this wouldn't happen.
I guess Peter officially stepped in.
Unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, I can't listen to that type of language. It gets very, very unhinged over there. And I'm not a Twitch guy. I don't understand that world at all. I don't understand the excitement behind it at all. No, Aiden's very big. Kaya, no, the Hassan Pikers. I know all these people, but I don't really, it's not my world. But I really want to talk to you. We're going to get back to the why and not the what, right? I want to break down what's happening by this guy being banned off of this platform and what this actually means. And I want to dig deeper into what's happening here. So I want to talk about the importance of this, because when somebody gets removed from a platform, everyone wants to scream afterwards that there's some issue with censorship. But once you really start looking at things deeper, when it comes to this type of stuff, anti-Semitism specifically right now, it's not free speech anymore because it's leading to actual violence, right? So it's about the fruit of which something bears. So every tree will produce a fruit. Every voice that a person is saying is producing a sound. Worldviews produce sometimes action based upon whatever those worldviews are. So the question is, what kind of fruit is coming forth from it? Does it bring clarity? Does it bring compassion? Is it bringing responsibility? Or does it just bring rage, right? Does it bring division? Does it bring moral chaos? That's probably what you're going to get every time you turn on a person like Hassan Piker. And for any person, why would they want that on their platform, right? So no matter really what the platform is about, why would they want that on their platform over and over again? The uncomfortable truth is this. You don't accidentally arrive at a place where there's, mass suffering of people becomes entertainment, like a lot of these clowns are. You don't accidentally normalize violence towards a particular group of people. That is a result of a long spiritual decay, emotional decay, a lot of times mental decay. And that decay always starts in the same place. And it starts in the same way. The moment you stop believing that human beings are created in God's image, once that's gone, everything becomes negotiable at that point. Life becomes cheap. Truth in itself becomes an optional thing. You could choose it if you want to. Cruelty in itself becomes a comedy, a form of comedy. And look, I'm not here to celebrate anybody being kicked off or losing any platform. But I am here to point out something. When your content constantly strips people of dignity, when it strips people of life, and you are bringing more darkness by your content, sooner or later, any system is going to know. And that's not because the system in itself is righteous, but because even when something is broken, it has to have limits, right? It has to have some type of limit. And the scary part is this. People don't even actually hate the fact that it's the injustice that's coming forth from it, right? They actually hate the responsibility, right? Because I'm just saying this for the sake of the system and all these other things. And I'm not saying on Twitch in itself, but let's just call a spade a spade. They're not really trying to fix the world, these platforms and all that. They're not to kick people off or whatever. It's just at the end of the day, they're going to have the responsibility. So then you take people like him who feel powerful, while tearing anything down and calls his form of whatever he's doing towards the Jewish people or pro-Palestinianism, whatever the case is. He calls it activism when it's not activism. It's more nihilism. And again, if you ask yourself, after listening to these voices, do you feel more inspired to become better? Or do you feel licensed to become a worse person? The difference between that and a godly truth is God's truth doesn't leave you empty. At the end of the day, if anything, a person will feel more accountable. Now, in addition to feeling whatever light, you will feel more of you feel more accountable as a human being. And when you watch content like that, it doesn't leave you that way, which is very telling of the individual who's making the content. And I'm sorry, I just have to say it in that way. As much as Aiden is celebrating, I celebrate horrible voices not being listened to anymore. Don't care about the fact of whether he's platformed or not, but the fact that he was not platformed anymore just indicates how bad that this person really was. Let's move on. Wait, before you get back to the show, I just want to let you know that we have launched Nissim Black Store. All you have to do is go online, order yourself one of these amazing mugs, God is King, with a matching t-shirt. We have a whole plethora of different shirts that are all about representing God wherever you go. As believers in the one true God of Israel, it is our duty not to hide, not to back down, not to shy away from expressing our faith wherever it is that we go. If you want to go and walk righteously before your God with a nice t-shirt, with a nice sweater, with a mug that's reminding us constantly that God is here with us, go to NissimBlack.store and make sure you get yourself some merch. It really helps support this channel and everything that we're doing and everything that we plan to do. And trust me, you don't want to miss it. I thank you all for all of your support. Okay, back to the show. When it's all said and done, I'm hoping that the Jewish people as a whole, especially for our work since October 7th of 2023, I hope that all of our work to unify the world goes recognized. Okay. And what I mean by that is because only when it comes to the hate of Jews, the hate of Israel, can you unify a democratic socialist and a Republican American first person and bring them together in camaraderie, unity, and laughter and togetherness, right? Because, I used to say, my mother used to say, actually, birds of a feather flock together. And there was one thing that I knew just growing up as a kid, and we've seen this come to pass, that tends to unify people. Like, I think that sometimes, it's even bad things that tend to unify people a lot, like, drugs, right? You'll find people that have a love for marijuana. And so you can get two unlikely people that would never talk or get into the same room, but because they have a love for this drug, that, sometimes at a festival, party, whatever, they get together and they're smoking and having a conversation, certain things that unify individuals, right? The Israel drug is causing all these people to get high, and they're all losing their mind, right? They are just all losing it together, and they are all getting together, becoming one unified single body. And what's interesting about this, I want to go through two clips of Tucker Carlson and his interview with Cenk Uygur from what's the name of the show? I think it's called the Turks, the Young Turks. Young Turks is what it is, right? And this guy gets unhinged. I mean, he's on Piers Morgan, more than Piers Morgan, and he's usually getting toast in all of his arguments because none of them are actually. But what's interesting about this conversation is the follow-up from Nick Fuentes, who is not really defending Jews, but he is. I don't, you're going to have to watch this, and we're going to watch it all the way through. I think Nick Fuentes' point is that he's coming from a different place, but it's going to be interesting to hear his commentary, which will be a little bit elongated. We'll go through what Nick says, but I want you to first watch these two just make a complete fool of themselves. Now, there were so many different clips to go through with these guys, I actually didn't know where to start. But I am going to give you just a few, and then we'll get into what Nick says because it's a little bit longer. And then I'm going to give you my take.
Okay, let me give you one more analogy that clarifies that.
Yes.
So it's like a movie where they tell you, hey, you know what? Your wife came in with this baby that she found, and it's a victim, and you guys are going to adopt it. And she's so golden-hearted, and she brought the kid home. And you go, okay, great, let me see the kid. And a guy walks in and goes, here, first I got to give you some glasses, okay? And he gives you glasses, and you put them on, and you go, oh my God, what a cute kid.
I have no idea where this analogy is going, but I love it.
Okay, yeah.
I'm totally wrapped up in it, okay.
Yeah, so, and your wife is nursing the kid and feeding it, etc. And then one day you go, I wonder what things look like without the glasses. And the guy who gave you the glasses goes, no, don't take the glasses off. Don't take the glasses off. Now you're like, wait a minute. I really want to take the glasses off. Right? And you take the glasses off and you find out the glasses were the illusion. It's not a baby. It's a grown man.
Ooh.
And he's been inside your house the whole time.
Chewing on your wife.
Cuddling with your wife.
Oh, no.
Taking your money. He's got like almost a half shirt on, big belly, hairy guy. He's sitting on your couch with your wife.
Suckling.
Okay. Suckling. It turns out the glasses were the thing that made you see it wrong. It made it seem like It was an innocent victim, a little baby you were taking care of. Now you find out you got a grown man inside your house.
Pawn on your wife and draining your checking account.
Now, the question is, who are you most mad at? Okay. I'm the least mad at the guy. First, though, the first action I'm going to take, even though I'm the least mad at him, is you got to leave. You got to leave the house right now. Otherwise, something terrible is going to happen.
The man-child.
Yes.
Who's second on your wife. Okay. Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Okay. First step is get the out of my house. Okay. Second guy I'm mad at is the guy who gave me the glasses.
Yeah.
What the f-? You made it seem like it was an innocent victim, and I was being a good guy by helping this entity. Okay. And now I find out, no, it was just someone taking advantage of me.
Yes.
And taking the person who was supposed to be closest to me, that was supposed to have trust with me.
Yes.
And taking all my money. And you played me for a fool. I hate the guy with the glasses, right? But the person I'm most upset
is the betrayer.
The wife in that case. It's an uncomfortable analogy. You could switch it to husband and wife. That's not the point. The point is, yes, if you don't get it by now, whether it's Israel or any really lobby, any donor class, that's the baby. The guy with the glasses is the media saying, oh no, these poor little oil companies, they need your money. Look at it, it's a victim. Otherwise, they can't drill for oil. These drug companies, they've only made trillions. You can't let them negotiate prices, right? Or it's Israel. Oh, it's an innocent victim of all the nasty Muslims and terrorists around them. And then you look at the map. Wait a minute, Israel has gained all this territory, and they've done it by taking $300 billion from us. But most importantly, the wife is the politicians.
Yes.
And they're supposed to represent us. And they have betrayed us. Okay. And I can't stand it. I can't stand it.
It's time for a divorce.
It's time for a divorce. So everyone's got to get out of the house. First, the hairy guy, you got to go. Okay. Otherwise, we're going to have trouble. Then the guy with the glasses, and then finally the wife. Everybody's got to go. We're going to get a fresh new start.
And I don't know for any of you guys, but that sounds so American first, right? That's America first. That's exactly what it is. Let's divorce of all these guys because they've been pulling the wool over your eyes. And I want you to notice this pattern, guys, as we keep going with all of this. And as we continue our coverage of the anti-Semites, the Jew haters of the world, and all these other pundits that are in front of people's face all the time. One of the things you will always see by them is they got the secret scoop. That is essential for these lies to keep taking place and for the anti-Israel rhetoric to get its foot into the ground. There has to be access of information that you didn't know about, or you have to be continuously being lied about nonstop. That's what has to be taking place. And only they are trustworthy. They are the new media. They are the ones that are able to present to you the truth that you've been missing out because there's been some guy coming giving you glasses, which is partly in truth. And that's the thing about it. We have to understand this. All truth, right, or all lies, I'm sorry, they have to begin with some truth. Does the media lie? Duh. We all know that. We know that the media lies. And so what happens is when you can get even a greater liar in the room, they're going to go and point to you and show you that the media lies, right? And they're going to start and establish that truth with you. And then from that, they latch onto your emotions because of what that did to you. And then they start taking you to all these other places that are just way off, way off. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to know. And just a little bit of investigation to really deeply look at the relationship between Israel and the United States and to see that the two mutually benefit from one another. And it's coming from a person, I don't really care about the politics of it. I am one of those guys that believe in the biblical relationship, the spiritual relationship between the Christian nation of the United States and Israel. I believe in that much more so on a biblical basis, much more than I care about the political side of it. But even from the political side of it, ladies and gentlemen, it does not take a rocket scientist to see that there is mutual benefits from the United States that the United States gets from Israel, which I've argued before on this channel. And I challenge any of you to show me the opposite, that the United States is getting more from Israel than what Israel's getting from the United States. And that's even with the approval of just was announced today. I saw that there was a $6-point-something billion dollar budget that was approved in Israeli defense from the United States. Something like that they have upped the defense weapons or budget. Even with that, and that's today's news, there is still much more of a benefit. I want to show to you guys another clip, actually. Let's get into it before I give my piece. And we have Nick Fuentes, but I want you to get my piece.
Anti-Semitism is wrong. I agree with you, Barry Weiss. Hating Muslims is right. No.
I mean,
I don't agree with you. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And by the way, don't bring that into my country. Go away.
Yes. Laura Loomer, Mark Levin say all the time, you should hate Muslims. Muslims are the problem. Well, then you've lost your moral high ground.
Well, they don't believe in a universal principle. It's just identity politics. It's no better than any other form of identity politics, and it's all disgusting and immoral.
Exactly.
Well, there's no doubt that Mark Levine, Laura Loomer, myself, others, many others have talked about radical Islam and the threat that it poses to the United States, and the threat that it poses to the West in general. I don't recall anybody saying you should hate these people. To say that, now once you say things, it's okay because, most of the time people are not going to go verify. That's what we've been talking about here. Most people are not going to verify what you had to say. That people said that you should hate these people or that you should be cautious and leery about what these people are doing, what they do and what they are doing. Because that's two different things. I want to get into this Nick Fuentes so you can see what his take was on this particular interview. It's a much more in-depth, and this is what I've been talking about for a long time. I've talked about it on this channel, on this podcast, and I have said that Nick Fuentes' nuance of his anti-Semitism, or rather Jew hatred, is a little bit deeper, or maybe even a lot more deeper than what people can actually understand, and maybe what his nuance is. And whether you say that he's more or less, that really doesn't matter to me. The fact of the matter is that, Nick, you have to hear this analysis because I want to run off into how right he may be, right? I really want to get into how right he may be with a lot of these things and then tell you why. On Nick, I'm going to tell you the why, not just the what. I'm going to tell you why on him. Right. But zooming out on these other two and there was much more, like I said, I wanted to talk about with these particular two. None of this is about the interviews in themselves. It's going to be about history. Every time that the Jewish people have told itself the exact same story, right? Rome told itself that story. All the enemies of the Jewish people have said the same story. Greece, Egypt, all of them thought that they were going to get somewhere with all the Jew hatred and all this this vitriol that eventually does lead to violence. It just has historically. So this is why people may be a little bit nervous about it. They have all said and all have thought that they were too powerful and that they were going to take the Jews and that they were going to eventually, be enlightened to what that truth was. They all had these conspiracies. Right? They all thought that they were on the right side of history. And every single one of those civilizations and tyrants or tyrannical regimes or countries or people, they all collapsed. And it wasn't because the Jews in themselves, it wasn't because of the Mossad, or it wasn't because they were too strong. It was because God never abandoned his covenant. And this is what these people are going to continuously fail to realize. And that's just the one part that everybody tends to forget. Standing against Israel has never really been a political mistake. It's really been more so of a spiritual mistake that people are making. And the irony of it is this, that even if you see it now, people are attacking each other, right? All the time. But then they get together over this one point. Right? Over this one point, they get together. They will attack each other from within the same camp, outside the same, but over this one point of Israel, they will get together. Now, Nick going after Tucker and Chink, you got to hear this, right? Everyone is eating their own alive. But when it comes to Israel, that's the one point. Now, Nick is going to take a different turn than what these guys actually said on this. Well, I want you to hear this because it is very, very impressive. Very impressive what he has to say.
Cenk Uygur was on Tucker Carlson today. And you should go and watch this because this is really instructive. Schenck, who is a democratic socialist, and Tucker, who is some kind of, I don't even know what, FBI agent, CIA agent, they sit down and they talk about Israel for the whole 2 hours. But throughout the 2 hours, they repeatedly restate this has nothing to do with Jews. And also, it has nothing to do with Israel in itself. They say our criticism is narrowly confined to the Israeli government and its ruling party. They say Israel's fine, Jews are fine. The state of Israel has nothing to do with Jews or Judaism or Jewish identity. And as a matter of fact, what Israel is doing has nothing to do with Israel as a state and its reason for existing. They say this is just sort of an incidental problem, an accidental problem. This government happens to be rogue. And that's when you realize they really do not understand the problem at all. And they are not on our side at all. Let me tell you the difference. People like to say, well, you're just a Nazi. You view Jews as a monolith. They say, you couch your views in irony. No one really even knows what your program is.
I do hope that he is a Nazi, right? And I think he is. I mean, anytime you yell Hail Hitler and you think he's cool and a lot of the things that Nick says. So one of these things is that I want to make sure the audience doesn't think that just because, you could get a steak out of garbage can. And that's what we're doing right now. We are not saying that Nick Fuentes is a voice of authority or anything else. And in fact, in him trying to, I think the way that we should observe this is in him trying to go deeper in on the Jew issue as an issue, he is actually being vindicating. And I don't think that that's his purpose here. And I'm going to go in and tell you why, and I'm going to explain and clarify some of what's been, said here in this this monologue from Nick Fuentes.
Let me tell you very unironically and very simply and succinctly what our issue is.
He's talking about his issue with the Jews.
We believe that Jews, being a stateless people, not having their own government, not having their own country to call their own for 2,000 years, is deeply ingrained in their culture, in their religion, in their community, their worldview, perhaps even in their genetics. It might even be coded at this point in their genetics. For 2,000 years, right up until the middle of the last century, this is a people that did not have a state, did not have land. And what did that make them? It made them a persistent minority, and a small one at that. Where did they live for the most part? They lived, in terms of the global Jewish population, the vast majority lived in Europe. Not all of them, but the vast majority of them lived in Europe. And what is Europe? It is racially European. It is, in terms of its religion, Christian. So for 2,000 years, these people were a minority with no political power, no land, no sovereignty, no state to call their own. They were a religious and a racial minority. And they were a racial and ethnic and religious minority inside of a Christian European civilization. And for 2,000 years, they were at the mercy of these people. They were vulnerable. So how did they survive as a minority? Well, first of all, and maybe this goes without saying, the biggest threat to them was not that they would all be beheaded. It's not that they would all be killed or conscripted or enslaved. The biggest threat, actually, and this might be counterintuitive, but the biggest threat is that they might be assimilated. That they've survived as a minority for 2,000 years is remarkable, not least of all because they had no land or standing army or government, but because, unlike other peoples, they resisted cultural and racial assimilation.
I mean, he's hitting it out of the park right now, ladies and gentlemen. He is hitting it out of the park. And he's saying this almost as if it's something negative. But we're going to get into what the Bible actually teaches, because that is going to be important. It's going to be important context for what Nick Fuentes is saying, and you're going to see why Jewish history has been the way that it is and why Jews are the way that they are when it comes to particular issues. And it's not because of what you think. It's not because of what he'll have you think. It's not because of what a lot of these other people who hate Jews and these replacement theology people, supersessionist people, it's not because of what they think. And I'm going to break it down in a very clear way for you to be able to understand what God is trying to get us to understand about the original covenant that he made to the Jewish people.
How did they do that? They did not intermarry. They did not adopt the language, the vernacular. They did not convert to the local religion. And even if they did it as a form of camouflage, as a form of deception. Needless to say, they were a very insular community, resistant to assimilation. They self-consciously did not assimilate, would not go with the crowd, would not become Christian, would not become European. They self-consciously segregated, isolated themselves. And what this says is they have a very strong identity and a persistent belief in their own story. It's a messianic story. It's a religious story. It's a sociological story.
And we'll get to all of that later. What he's saying is actually true. And I think that most people who read the Bible up until this point will say, well, Nick, that's actually true. Let's figure out what his punchline is.
They have these traits. They don't want to assimilate. They don't want to be like us. They identify as the other, actually.
Which is so funny, by the way, because just a side note, I don't mean to go off on this, but anybody who's followed pop culture, they don't want to be like us. And I made this comment before, the Not Like Us crew. What's interesting is that there is there was a feud a couple years ago between Kendrick Lamar and Drake. Now, I don't know Drake personally. We do have some mutual friends. Drake is Jewish. He's 100% Jewish. His mother was Jewish, according to the Jewish faith. Whether your mother was born, you're born of a Jewish mother, or you converted to Judaism, then you're 100% Jewish. If the father is not Jewish according to Jewish law, then you are not considered Jewish fully. Okay, so with all that said, Drake is Jewish. Kendrick Lamar, coming from wherever he comes from, Compton, he's black, not Jewish. So he makes a song against Drake that ends up blowing up. I'm telling you, it's crazy, because this song hits billions, like billions of listens. He performs it at the halftime of the Super Bowl, right? And the name of the song is called Not Like Us. Now, Drake, who for whatever reason stays out of politics, doesn't talk about Israel, doesn't talk a whole lot about his Judaism. He has spoken somewhat of his bar mitzvah and everything like that. However, he doesn't really come out at all in the defense of his Judaism or Israel or anything like that. And to my knowledge, he hasn't even been to Israel before yet. However, he hasn't said anything. But the name of the song against Drake, the Jewish guy, is called Not Like Us. Is very, very telling. Just in context of what Nick is saying, and then I'm going to give you over why Jews are not allowed to be like us.
We don't other them, they other themselves, because they don't want to be like us. So they have not been marginalized, they're self-marginalizing, self-segregating. That is intentional, that is actually a high priority for them. It's extremely important. And so what does this group do to survive? Well, what did they do in the United States? When this religious and ethnic minority arrived in the United States, they started pushing for minority rights. They are a tiny minority, and they're not just a racial minority, they're also a religious minority. At least Italians or Irish could identify with the English and the Germans because ostensibly they are Christian, even though from a different sect, and they are European. They're from the same continent and share some heritage with Western civilization, the Renaissance, the Romans, the Greeks. There's some sense of continuity. The Jews don't have that. They come from the Middle East. They have a completely different religion. So when the Jews arrive here, how do they make it comfortable for themselves as a religious and ethnic minority? And America became the capital of global Jewry in the 20th century. How did they make it comfortable for themselves? They advocated for minority rights. Minority rights as refugees to enter the United States, as immigrants from non-white, non-Christian countries to immigrate to the United States. They advocated for the erasure of quotas in institutions like the universities. They advocated for a neutral public space without Christianity, without prayer, without Christian symbols. They advocated for a self-conception of American identity.
By and large, just need to say this, is we're not Bible-obeying religious Jews who were doing this. Very few, far none. Most of the very religious, faithful to the covenant and commandment Jews who had moved to the United States didn't want to have anything to do with politics. Were literally just only running for their lives, did not plant themselves inside of getting involved with all of this. So there were distinctions of this. Nick will not say this because going back to what people were accusing him of as they're a monolith. It's just one thing, one group of people. And so therefore they becomes everybody. And that is the major problem whenever you're talking about any group of people, right? You say that they becomes everybody, all right? Or what the essence of what the people were. And this just simply was not true in that regard. Did it happen? Absolutely. But is it not justified? I think even Nick in himself is going to justify it, right? And the reason why is because, as he said, they lived in Europe, predominantly Christian nations. What was happening in Europe? The pogroms. People were being mass murdered. And this is prior to the Holocaust. And in a lot of ways, places like Ukraine was way worse on Jews than Germany was. Right? They don't have the numbers, but you're talking about day to day, just the amount of, and these were those Christian nations. So the people, in order to prevent that, it's like, listen, hey, there was an issue at that time, if we're just being honest. Like, this is pre, I guess I would say the mass movement, the evangelicals that actually are very friendly to Israel. This is pre all of that. Coming from where they had come from, the relationship with Christianity was very similar to radical Islam today. Hey, listen, the more religious, the more violent the neighbors get. So therefore, if we push off some of the idea of this of religion being at the center focus of these guys, that we may be able to survive here. We may be able to live here. So that is the point. And Nick in other places has pointed this out. He doesn't hinge on that because he has a bigger point. His bigger point is no, we should go for that, Christianity that, put its foot down on the Jews and everything else. And that's because that's where he's coming from. He's telling the same thing I'm saying it, but he's just coming from a different side.
Divorced from race and religion. Because if America identified as a race or religion, it would identify as white and Christian. And that would leave Jews marginalized. So they said America's for everybody. It's a melting pot. It's a nation of immigrants. Well, not really. When America started, it was a nation of colonists and settlers and pioneers and explorers, not immigrants. The people that came here originally came here and set up homesteads, fought the Indians, set up little colonies and cut down trees and fished and made farms. Those aren't immigrants. Those are settlers. Those are colonists building a new country and a new world. It was only until much later, centuries into the project, that America became mostly or significantly comprised of immigrants. And even still, they were all from Europe and they were mostly Christian. But Jews created this idea that no, America's a nation of all kinds of people. Black slaves, indigenous Americans, Hispanics, Mexicans from the Southwest, Chinese from the railroads, Jewish refugees, and now immigrants from all over the world. And we would say that this is the collective strategy of Jews in the diaspora. Jews are a diaspora. After their country was decimated by the Roman Empire in the 1st and 2nd century, they became a diasporic people, and they went out into the world, and this is how they got along. That is until they created Israel, a recent development. Then there was another part of the strategy. They realized 100 years ago, we don't want to live in a country where we're outnumbered. We don't want to live forever in countries where we are outnumbered, outvoted, overpowered, because ultimately what can happen anywhere, and what inevitably will happen on a long enough timeline anywhere, is we will see the rise of a Hitler. We will see the rise of a Philip II. We will see the rise of a Alexander III, a tyrant that will oppress.
And Nick Fuentes, I think that's what he was getting to. I think that's what he wanted to say. We will see the rise of a Nick Fuentes.
The Jews. So they said, we ultimately need our own place. And originally they said it can be anywhere. It could be in Uruguay. It could be in Zimbabwe. It could be in Australia. It could be in the Russian Far East. Ultimately, they settled on Palestine and they set up shop there.
Now, that's true for some, but not true for all. One of the things that Nick fails to tell you, and most people fail to tell you, is that Jews were actually already in Israel. You have to realize this, that even before before 1948, you talk about 1500s. You had people that were living there. Tzfat, the grave of Safed, I forget how you say it actually in English, but Tzfat, as we say in Hebrew, in the northern Galilee area, like that area is full of graves. It's a Jewish graveyard there of people that died in the 1500s, 1400s, 1200s. Like Jews were already living there. So there was no, there's some other place. Yes, there were secular Jews who were Zionists, who had some idea of building even in Uganda or wherever the case was. I forget what other place in Africa. And their idea was survival. But if you're talking about, this is what I'm talking about, the monolith. Because religious Jews had already lived there. The Baal Shem Tov students, the founder of the Hasidic movement, he had many students already living in the land of Israel, and they were there before because of the land, because of the biblical promise of the land. Jews were already coming back in droves to Israel already prior to 1948, contrary to what they want to tell you, right? But because it's a monolith, even though he's saying it's not, he's saying the the Jews. This is what you have to understand. Another point I want to touch on too is where Nick Fuentes is trying to project his racism onto the Jewish people. And there is something to be said about not like us. I just want to get into this really quickly in closing for today's podcast, actually. I want to say this. This has nothing to do with racism. The fact that Jews don't marry outside of Judaism, I mean, a lot of religions have these things. I think in Islam, you are allowed to marry outside the religion. As far as Christians, is heavily discouraged inside of Christianity. The term of being unevenly yoked, being married to somebody who's not a believer, is also frowned upon. But this is a little bit different because there is something to do with what the biblical command is for Jews in terms of this, but it has nothing to do with racism. It has everything to do with what the Bible says in biblical instruction. It has everything to do with biblical prophecy and the biblical promise. The Jewish people are the central framework of biblical eschatology. That means the end time studies. They are the surrounding structure by which God moves history towards the future. And you'll see this over and over again in the prophets. There's no future without the speaking of the Jewish people in the Jewish homeland. Every prophet speaks about that awesome and great day. And the main characters in that story are the land of Israel, the Jewish people, and then the nations that attach themselves to them. So this is a very important thing to understand when you're hearing rhetoric like this from Nick Fuentes, because understand it in context what the Jewish survival mechanism is and why there's not this idea to assimilate into the cultures that are around you. It's not racism why Jews do this. And it's not racism why they were commanded not to intermarry. It is a foundational biblical point, whether you are Jewish or not. And I'm going to say this very clearly. I want everybody to hear this. Right? You can have a Jew in a relationship with a non-Jew, And I'm talking about like a marital relationship, right? And it could be undeniably true, agreed upon by Jews and non-Jews alike, that the non-Jew is a better person. That person, they could be the sweetest, kindest, most righteous person on earth. And the Jew can be completely cut off from all godliness, never kept a single commandment, deeply grotesque, Jeffrey Epstein type of Jew. Okay? God forbid. And even still, they're not allowed to get married without, the non-Jewish person converting, obviously. Even if the non-Jew is an angel, that person could be a Gentile angel, even in the highest place of heaven. When it's said and done, they're going to the highest place. And the reason why, it isn't about who's nicer. It isn't about, race or any of that. It's about a covenant. The Jewish people were commanded to remain separate and distinct because God is ushering in the final and awesome day. They were separate to be a priestly people unto God. And just like within Judaism or within the tribes, right, you have the priest, you have the Kohanim. And you don't get to be from any tribe. You can't be from Judah or Asher or Naphtali or Zebulun. You can't be from any of these tribes and decide you want to also be a priest. You can't do that. No matter how holy the person may be. You can't say, I'm holy, so therefore I qualify for that. Unless you come from the line of Aaron, the brother of Moses, you don't get to be a Cohen. You can't be a priest, no matter how awesome or holy a person may be. Right? So it's not about better. It's about distinction. God is a God of distinctions. He makes distinctions. And that's something that modern culture actually hates. And the reason why they hate it is because God is so for it. As society moves further and further away from God, what happens inevitably is that society begins to hate the very things that God loves. That is the fingerprint of that allows us to know where we are in terms of the final day of redemption. As the world moves further and further away from God, it begins to hate the very thing that God loves, everything that he stands for. And distinctions is something that God stands for. Everyone wants equal this, equal that, but equal does not mean, even if you go for equal, it doesn't mean identical. That's not what it means. Things can have equal value and still have different roles. That's what happens. So separation matters because that's how truth stays clear, right? If light and darkness become mixed, and I'm not talking about in a spiritual light versus darkness. Let's talk about day and night, right? Day and night, if it becomes mixed, you get confused. If a person doesn't know what's the difference between day and night, right? God is not a God of confusion. He wants things to be in their proper place. So Jews are called to be a distinct people because they have a mission. They have commandments that God gave specifically to them. They have a covenant that they're required to live out. And for the world to reach its redemption, the Jewish people must remain a distinct people. Why? Because if they don't, then God in the end becomes a liar. Why do you say that? I say that because all of the promises of the future, throughout all of the prophets, the Jewish people surviving and thriving until the end is the main part of the story. They are meant to be the living witnesses to the world. When Jews keep Shabbat and they honor the seventh day, they are witnesses to the rest of the world to remind the world that God created the world in 6 days and on the seventh day he rested. They become witnesses. They project that out to the world that God for 6, he worked and then he rested. So the Jewish people in many ways become witnesses for the world. And so when Jews return from the north and the south and the east, just as it was predicted in the Bible by the prophets, when Israel is repopulated again and the vegetation is growing and all the things that were said in the book of Ezekiel and Hosea and Amos and all of these places, that is supposed to be something that tells the world that the redemption is near. God is a God of signs, and he wants that all of humanity is going to understand what's going on and not be oblivious to what's going on in the future. He wants people to recognize it. He wants them to see when the time is near. And because redemption is for everybody. It's not just for the Jewish people. It's not just for this group of people or that group of people. It's for everybody. And the Jewish people are the sign. God says they are the sign. Not because they're better, they have to be there. And God, in fact, God says you're the least of the people. God shows his greatness through the fact that he's going to take, he says, I'm take you as the least of the people in order to show his might to the world. They are his witnesses. So if Jews fully assimilate, redemption can't come. And that's why even in Christian language, I think Paul writes in the Christian Bible, salvation is of the Jews. Now, most people usually use this to say, talking about because Jesus was Jewish. If they're Christian, they say because Jesus was Jewish. That's what it was talking about. But that's not what the prophets are saying. The prophets are saying, not that the Jewish people are ushering it in. It's the fact that God ushers it in based upon the Jewish people. They become the clock of God, of what is happening in the future. So they show when the time is approaching. That's why Zechariah says that there will be a time will come where people from the nations, tens from the nations will grab the garment of the Jew and say, let me go with you because I hear that God is with you. Jeremiah talks about a time when there will be nations that will come and join themselves to the Jewish people, abandoning their ways of their fathers and come to attach themselves to the Jewish people. There are many passages like that. So in essence, the Jewish people become God's business card to the world. The survival of the Jewish people is the fact that God exists, because he gave forth a word. In the face of adversity, Jewish people have faced extinction throughout many generations. So once you see the people that were scattered, they were hunted, they were burned, they were exiled, and once you see that they're still here, speaking Hebrew, keeping Torah, still returning home, then you're supposed to understand something. God is real. Redemption is near. That does not mean the Jews are better than everyone else. That was not the point of what God was saying when he wanted them to be a distinct people. That was never the point. The mission is the point. The covenant is the point. The point is that God chose one people to carry his promise through history so that the world would never lose sight of him. It's not racism. It's the Bible. Ladies and gentlemen, we will conclude with that today. I appreciate every single one of you today. Remember, as we always say, ladies and gentlemen, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, share this with your friends, and above all, everyone, please remember this: serve God or live trying. I'm out.